government is acting in violation of international law. Its duty to prevent genocide and its obligation under the Arms Trade Treaty.
Okay. Test. شايفني؟
We will keep fighting. Well, obviously,
Okay. Okay.
Plan will
تمام.
appeal this case.
1 2 1
We as Human Rights Watch
test.
will consider whether we also intervene at the next stage. But this
Okay,
is the end. And also, the court
Okay.
judgment has invited Parliament to take action. So it's critical now that the representatives of the UK population take action and make sure that the government is transparent, clear, and held to account.
Hi, Rich.
Hi, how are you? Nice to see you.
Yeah,
Good to see you.
I'm okay given the circumstances.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming down.
Well, I think this gives us an opportunity, actually.
Yeah.
Which is what I'll be saying, in that the judgment makes it clear it's a matter for the government and Parliament to decide whether or not
Exactly.
it does this.
Exactly.
And so the government has been hiding behind that it's a matter of courts, legality. So actually, we can no longer pass the buck anymore. And what I'm going to say is, well, the government can either stop these exports now, or if they don't want to do that, that's what we're going for now. And that will be a way forward. Yeah. So I can think in a way that will strengthen the church in that way.
So, Diana sent me how's it going? McCarthy.
I was just saying that we need to now get Parliament active.
MC
Yep.
C
Yep.
ARTHY.
No way.
And Doran, is that how it's spelled?
Darren. That is how you spell it.
Amazing.
Yeah, but it just sounds completely different.
Yeah. No, that's great.
No transparency.
Yes, so Diana, she sent me a green message. So maybe.
All deference, 100% deference, without any transparency and accountability. I mean, Parliament's role now,
We did, we met on the first
strategic exercise in that criteria. Have I been factored in? What we did that day was not sufficient explanation, because there's no explanation of what they missed by
Darren and other and
Russia wants to provide
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely, it is fascinating. It is 100% fascinating. But Charlotte and I were talking, and we're like, this literally is like official court judgment. Saturday. Complete deference. The executive. I think there are whole judgments. I think that's going to be its downfall, 100%, and it's going to be appealed. And like, is he? That's what exactly. I don't want to be in this in the middle.
I mean, we'll get it.
But you exactly.
so much for my sound system.
Yeah, and also, explicitly said this is about the democratic process. So let the democratic process play its role.
He has been had a good parade.
Just do it. I mean,
Honestly, I'll work with Charlotte on that. And then I'm like, no, she's on study leave.
I'm on study leave. Yeah.
What are you doing? Oh, are you? I thought you were already on study.
Yeah. No, I'm actually,
Yeah, yeah, we do. And yeah,
And then just come on.
I'm currently taking my course.
I did that.
Along with all the other 23-year-olds. And I'm like,
I had to do it too. I came in that first qualified triple G. Took all my exams. Sucks. And you have to do
I can leave that now.
exactly.
Oh yeah.
Law and choice. And I'm like, I'm never going to use this.
I'm currently learning about dividends
Yeah, that's the stuff.
and mortgages. And I'm like, it's so routine.
Yeah, of course I can stand behind
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, otherwise, I look very.
Yeah.
I look like some bodyguard or something rather than part of this.
We've met. You and I have met. Yeah. How's everything going? Yeah. Yeah, we only met last time. Yeah. Janine
We know, yeah. People I know keep
none of no one's lived on Rama.
We're not all particularly great.
No, but the you wouldn't be able to like organisations grassroots when you are. When you see, Clive.
Yeah, exactly. So we've actually got that.
You go in, you should go in here. Like you go.
Oh, sorry.
You? Maybe you go in the, if you're with Al-Haq, maybe you should go there. We just do it intervening.
Yeah, you should be more central.
Yeah, you should be more central than us.
Just have no water bottle.
Oh, do you want to put it in my bag? Put it in.
So that great bag of mine, squish it or whatever you need.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming at late notice. My name's George, I'm a lawyer at Glan. I'm just here to introduce the speakers. So I'll pass on to Janine Walker, who's a lawyer at Glan, to speak about the judgment that was handed down earlier this morning.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. Is this good? Yep, okay. Today we received judgment in Al-Haq's judicial review claim against the UK government for its continued licensing of F-35 parts into the global supply chain that serves Israel. The court has not upheld Al-Haq's claim. We are currently analysing the judgment for grounds to appeal. This is a regrettable setback after such a long battle for Al-Haq and all the Palestinians who have been following the case. However, this is not the end. We are steadfast in standing with our Palestinian partners. This is no more than a temporary setback in the ultimate journey towards freedom and justice for the Palestinian people. It's important to set out here what the court did not find. It did not endorse the government's assessment of that there's no serious risk of genocide. It declined to adjudicate on it. The court has not even considered the substance of key parts of Al-Haq's case, which argued that the government's decision-making was not consistent with its international law obligations. The court has said that under the UK's constitution, these are matters for Parliament and the public to hold the government to account on. Yet the government has repeatedly hidden behind the legal process to avoid Parliament scrutiny. The government now has nowhere to hide. It's important to remember what this case has achieved. In September 2024, under threat of an injunction from us, and only 90 minutes before they were due to face us in court, the government suspended licenses for all weapons to Israel to be used by the Israeli army in Gaza, except for the F-35 parts that the UK sends to the global supply chain. This case has also forced the government to disclose documents that reveal its true colours. The evidence base that shows it received reliable reports of Palestinian children with bullet wounds consistent with Israeli snipers having shooting competitions, and the assessment of Israel's processes for the conduct of hostilities and targeting as, and I quote, thorough and rigorous, and that in many ways resemble our own. Or the reports in February and April 2024 containing evidence of large numbers of Palestinian women and children being violently killed by the Israeli forces, and then the government's assessment in July 2024 that there was no serious risk of genocide because, and I quote, no evidence has been seen that Israel is deliberately targeting women and children. This is a temporary setback. We stand steadfast with all our partners, and we will continue the journey towards justice and freedom for all Palestinian people. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine, for that. I'm now going to pass over to Doreen McCarthy, who's a legal researcher at Al-Haq, who brought the claim.
Thank you very much. Now, as we stand here today, every single Palestinian in Gaza is suffering from displacement, illness, starvation, injury, and deep psychological trauma, all inflicted as part of the genocidal warfare being waged by Israel. For nearly 21 months, Israel, in its long-standing policy of settler colonial violence and pursuit of Palestinian erasure, has been committing some of the gravest atrocity crimes against the Palestinian people in Gaza. Supposed aid distribution sites function as killing fields where starving, defenceless Palestinians are targeted while waiting for food. Images of children crying over the bodies of their parents, babies pulled from the rubble, and the displaced burnt alive in tents, shelters, hospitals and schools, Palestinians that have already lost everything, are commonplace in this daily live-streamed genocidal campaign. Today, the entire Palestinian people and their future is facing erasure by Israel's settler colonial apartheid regime and complicit states. This is why we launched this case, to challenge the UK government's complicity in the ongoing atrocities in Gaza, to stop the supply of F-35s, to end the genocide. Set against this backdrop of death and destruction, and just 3 months after the Labour government partially suspended arms exports over concerns that they could be used unlawfully in Gaza, the UK approved nearly £125 million worth of military equipment sales to Israel. Today, in what is estimated to be a vast undercount, at least 56,156 Palestinians have been murdered and 132,239 Palestinians have been injured. As the genocide in Gaza rages on, Israeli settler colonial violence has reached unprecedented levels in the West Bank. Tens of thousands of Palestinians there have been forcibly displaced by Israeli occupying forces, primarily from refugee camps, in the largest process of mass transfer since the Nakba in 1967 and the Nakba in 1948. Israeli settler rampages through Palestinian communities, marked by violent attacks and the torching of homes, continue unabated. Simultaneously, restrictions on movement, home demolitions, arbitrary arrests, and near daily military raids on towns and refugee camps across the West Bank persist. Palestinian voices are being suppressed and silenced, human rights work is being unlawfully criminalised, and accountability mechanisms such as the ICC are being restricted, all to protect Israel's impunity. All of this is taking place as Israeli politicians openly advocate and pursue the formal annexation of the West Bank. Just this month, Israel approved 22 new illegal settlements, the largest expansion in decades. While Israel continues its genocidal Nakba against the Palestinian people, the international community continues to provide the diplomatic, financial and material support necessary to achieve its criminal imperialist goals. Today's judgment has been fundamental to exposing the extent of UK complicity in Israel's crimes against the Palestinian people, rallying public support and working towards justice for Palestinians. Despite today's outcome, we remain steadfast in our fight for justice, dignity and full self-determination for the Palestinian people and their right to return to their homes in Palestine. Israeli leaders are openly inciting genocide while hiding behind the rhetoric of self-defense. Israel, as an occupying power, does not have a right to self-defense to use aggressive force against the occupied population already under its unlawful occupation and control. There is no right to self-defense to commit genocide. We urge all groups, civil society, grassroots, and people of conscience to continue this fight for justice and human dignity. The survival of the Palestinian people depends on it. This fight must continue. The UK in particular has a historic responsibility towards Palestinians, and this case is just a starting point in our fight for justice and accountability. States, which have been put on notice, must impose a two-way arms embargo, sever all diplomatic, political, economic and trade relations with Israel, unseat Israel, an apartheid genocidal state, from the UN General Assembly, arrest and prosecute perpetrators and enablers of genocide and other international crimes, including dual nationals serving in the IOF, demand an open and unimpeded access to humanitarian organisations, fact-finding missions, state representatives and diplomats and journalists to the Gaza Strip, and finally call for an unconditional end to Israel's settler colonial apartheid regime, rooted in death, destruction, displacement, land theft, racial oppression, domination, strategic fragmentation, and persecution and erasure of the Palestinian people. It is our collective duty to ensure Palestinians are able to exercise their human rights, including their fundamental right to self-determination and return to their homeland. We cannot achieve real justice without addressing the root causes of the genocide and continuing injustice of the past. Free Palestine.
Thank you so much. And now I'm going to bring up Yasmin from Human Rights Watch, which is one of the three interveners in the case.
Today is a sad day for justice, accountability, international law, but mostly for the Palestinian people who continue to face acts of genocide and other atrocity crimes. What we've seen today is unfortunately a court that was unwilling to stand behind and reflect on the decision of and the justification of national security. But what we've seen also is a failure to reflect on the security of the Palestinian people to be free from acts of genocide and atrocities. The court today has invited Parliament to now hold the executive to account, to ask questions and to ensure that the government is complying with their international obligations. And what we as Human Rights Watch are calling for is that as the government have said that they will comply with international law, they should. The facts on the ground are clear. The government is not complying with its obligation and its duty to prevent genocide and its obligations under the Arms Trade Treaty. But today is not the end. Today is the beginning of the fight that we will all continue for the rights of the Palestinian people. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Yasmin. I'm now going to pass it over to Sasha from Amnesty International UK, who is one of the other interveners in the case.
Thank you. We at Amnesty International are disappointed by today's ruling. But the court has been clear that while it does not have the authority to make a judgment on UK exports of F-35 arms parts, this does not absolve the executive or Parliament from their responsibilities to act. The UK has a clear legal obligation to help prevent and punish genocide, and yet it continues to authorise the export of weapons to Israel despite the clear risks that these weapons are being used to commit genocide. What's unfolding in Gaza is not hidden. It's being broadcast to the whole world in real time. Entire Palestinian families are being wiped out in their homes. Civilians are being targeted in what should be safe spaces. Gaza's medical system has been systematically dismantled. Its water and sanitation infrastructure has been destroyed, and its population subjected to starvation and siege. Over 1 million people have been forcibly displaced, with no safe place to go. These acts are not accidental, and in Amnesty's view, there is only one clear conclusion that can be reached. This is a genocide. This judgment does not change either the appalling reality or the illegality of the facts on the ground, nor does it absolve the UK of its responsibilities under international law. The risk that UK arms may be used to facilitate such serious international crimes remains alarmingly real and alarmingly high. If the courts now say that they do not have the ability to intervene, then the moral and legal burden on the government and parliament to act before more lives are lost and further irreparable harm is done is even greater. Ministers and members of parliament can no longer hide behind courts in avoiding their legal responsibilities under international law. If it's disappointing that the court today could not act itself, it has been clear that the responsibility to act properly rests with Parliament and ministers, and they cannot deny or obfuscate that they hold those responsibilities. The UK must end all arms transfers to Israel if we as a country are serious about our commitments to international law and human rights.
Speaking next will be Shahid from Oxfam, which is the third NGO that intervened in the case.
The judgment today is extremely and deeply disappointing. The court and the government have both acknowledged that the UK arms are at risk of being used in breaches of international humanitarian law in Gaza, yet prioritize the supply chains of fighter jets over the lives of Palestinians. It is unconscionable that the government would continue to license the sale components of the F-35 jets, knowing that they are used to deliberately attack civilians in Gaza and destroy their means of survival, including vital water supplies. In the 10 months since the government suspended some arms licenses to Israel, over 15,000 people in Gaza have been killed. The majority of those are women and children. There can be no excuse for the UK government's continued complicity in war crimes and crimes against humanity. The UK government should do what is morally right and immediately suspend all arms sales to Israel. And we at Oxfam will continue to support Al-Haq action following this hearing, and we will continue to hold the UK government accountable to its obligations under international human rights law and the Arms Trade Treaty, and most importantly to the Palestinian people in Gaza. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Next up to speak, and we're delighted that she's here, is Amira Nimaurawi from Health Workers for Palestine.
Just this morning, we received the news of Dr. Mahmoud Shahada Askoul, a renowned pulmonary consultant from Gaza, bombed in his tent in Khan Yunis and killed. So, this news, this death, is directly related to the news that we have received this morning. With 1,580 health workers deliberately targeted and killed over the last 20 months, with hundreds just in the last months alone, it is very clear that Israel's intent to wipe out the healthcare sector is intending to continue the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians by depriving us of our healthcare system. Standing here today, as the CEO of Health Workers for Palestine, it is extremely disappointing to hear the decision today. As a Palestinian with family, friends, and colleagues in Gaza, it is extremely emotional. It is devastating. Because every single day that passes, there are hundreds of Palestinians in Gaza that are being deliberately targeted and killed using such weaponry. However, as my colleagues said here today, this is just the beginning. And as a voice dedicated to amplifying the voices of Palestinian healthcare workers from Gaza and across Palestine, we will not stop, because ending the supply of arms to Israel is the bare minimum, and holding this government to account for its complicity and its obstruction to justice is just the bare minimum. And we are buoyed by our allies who are standing here today, by Gilan and Al-Haq, who took this case forward and remain committed to pushing this case through. And we are inspired by the healthcare leaders in Gaza and across Palestine, who every single day wake up to the realities of living and working under a 77-year occupation. So we are not surprised by the news today, given the UK government's long history of complicity and obstruction of justice. But it has galvanized us, and we will continue to struggle for a free and liberated Palestine with a Palestinian-led healthcare system. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Richard Burgeon, MP.
Thank you very much. And I speak here as a member of Parliament, and I've got a clear message for the government. There may be some in the government who, after receiving this court judgment today, feel pleased, feel relieved. I would say that's a big mistake, because this court judgment is very clear that this isn't a matter for the courts to decide in the view of the courts. It's a matter for the government and Parliament to decide. So the government can no longer pass the buck. On many occasions when we've raised the horrors of what's going on in Gaza, of Israel's war on Gaza, we've been told by government ministers that this, that or the other is a matter for the courts to decide. The court judgment has been very clear that on the subject of the provision of F-35 parts, the international pool, they say it's not a matter for the courts, it's a matter for the government. They say it's not a matter for the courts, it's a matter for the democratic process. So the government now has nowhere to hide. It can't pass the buck. The choice of the government after this morning's judgment is very clear. The government should immediately take the decision to stop supplying its F-35 parts, or the government remains complicit in genocide. And so I'm calling now, if the government won't do that, for a vote immediately in Parliament on whether or not these F-35 exports should continue. We know how quickly governments and this government can arrange votes when it suits them. Let's have a vote now on this. So let's end the passing of the buck. Let's end the saying it's for the courts to decide from government ministers. The government needs to take moral responsibility now and decide whether or not it wants to continue complicity in a genocide. And if it makes the wrong decision, it won't necessarily be the courts that they need to be scared of in terms of judgment. It will be the judgment of the people, the judgment of history, but most importantly, the judgment of the Palestinian people, who deserve self-determination, deserve their state, and deserve to be free. We'll keep on pushing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard, and for everyone who attends. That will conclude the speakers for today. We'll remain around for any questions. Thank you very much.